Greetings, my seniors and my colleagues. Thank you organizers for allowing me to present Vedic grammar, the grammar of the great religious text of the Hindus. I request you all to join your hands in a prayer in Sanskrit, the language of the Vedas. Dhyo Shantihi antarikshagvam Shantihi prithvihi Shantihi rapah Shantiroshadhayah Shantihi vanaspatayah Shantihi vishve devah Shanti brahma sarvagvam Shantihi Shantihi reva Shantihi sama Shantihi redhi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shanti The meaning of this prayer, ladies and gentlemen, is: unto the heaven be peace, unto the sky and the earth be peace. Peace be unto the waters, unto the herbs and trees be peace. Unto all gods be peace, unto Brahma and unto all be peace. And may we realize that peace. Om, peace, peace, peace. This is a piece of Rigvedic manuscript in Devanagari script from early 19th century. The hymns of the Vedas were composed around 600 BC, centuries before the introduction of writing into India. They were handed down by oral tradition to the present day. The text of the Samhitas have been preserved in manuscripts, the earliest of which, owing to adverse climatic conditions of India, are scarcely 5 centuries old. When they were written, and whether the hymns of the Vedas were edited in the form of Samhita and Pada texts with the aid of writing is not conclusive. It is almost inconceivable that the voluminous prose works of Brahmanas, in particular the Saptapatha Brahmana, could have been composed and preserved without such aid. The Vedic language is represented by 2 main linguistic strata, in each of which the earlier and the later phases may be distinguished. The older period is that of the mantras, the hymns and spells addressed to the gods, which are contained in the various Samhita. Of these, Rig Veda, which is the most important, represents the earliest stage. The later part is that of the prose texts called Brahmanas. The oldest of them are approximately the stage of classical Sanskrit, but they still retain the use of the subjunctive and employ many different types of infinitives, while Sanskrit has lost the former and preserves only one single type of the latter. The prose of these works is interfered with by exigencies of meter. The linguistic material of the Rig Veda being more ancient, extensive and authentic than that of the other Samhitas, all of which borrow largely from it, is taken as the basis of this grammar and is supplemented from the other Samhitas. Vedic Sanskrit grammar is the oldest attested full case and tense system grammar of a language from the Indo-European language family. Vedic Sanskrit is an old Indo-Aryan language, the ancestor Sanskrit, and an early descendant of Proto-Indo-Iranian. It is closely related to Avestan, the oldest preserved Iranian language. Vedic Sanskrit is the oldest and attested language of the Indo-Iranian branch of the Indo-European family. Vedic Sanskrit was compiled over the period of early to mid-second to mid-first millennium BC. For lack of both epigraphic evidence and an unbroken manuscript tradition, Vedic Sanskrit can be considered a reconstructed language. Recovering its original form is a matter of linguistic reconstruction. From about the 6th century BC, in the classical period of the Iron Age ancient India, Vedic Sanskrit gave way to classical Sanskrit as defined by the grammar of Panini. In spite of being reconstructed form of Proto-Indo-Iranian, Vedic Sanskrit is clearly marked as a language of the Indic group. Among the phonological changes from Proto-Indo-Iranian is the loss of the j and the zh phonemes and the introduction of a series of retroflex stops. Vedic Sanskrit vocabulary shows a considerable number of loan words taken from an indigenous Indian source. This influence of Vedic Sanskrit also extends to phonetic, morphological and syntactical features and is variously traced to the Dravidian or Munda language families. The separation of Indo-Aryan proper from Proto-Indo-Iranian ancestor group is commonly dated on linguistic grounds to roughly 1800 BC. The composition of the oldest hymns of the Rig Veda is dated to several centuries after this division or to roughly 1500 BC. The locus of the division of Indo-Aryan from Iranian is placed in the Bronze Age culture. Rig Vedic Sanskrit within the larger Indo-Aryan group is the direct ancestor of the Dardian language. The hymns of the Rig Vedas are thus composed in a liturgical language which was based on natural language spoken in Gandhar during the early phase of the Swat culture at the end of the Indian Bronze Age. This liturgical language over the following centuries came to be separated from spoken vernaculars and came to be known as artificial or elaborated language, contrasted to the natural or unrefined vernaculars by the end of the Vedic period. 5 chronological distinct strata can be identified within the Vedic language. The Rig Veda retains many common Indo-Iranian elements both in language and in content, but are not present in any other Vedic text. Its creation takes place over several centuries and must have been completed by around 12th century BC. The mantra language corresponding to the early Iron Age in northwestern India and to the kingdom of the Kurus dating from about the 12th century BC includes both the mantra and prose language of the Atharva Veda, the Rig Veda, the Samveda and the Yajurveda. These texts are largely derived from Rig Veda but have undergone certain changes both by linguistic and by reinterpretation. Conspicuous changes include change of Visva, all, to Sarva and the spread of Kuru. Samhita prose marks the beginning of collection and codification of Vedic canon. An important linguistic change is the complete loss of the injunctive and of the grammatical moods of the aorist. Brahmana prose proper of the 4 Vedas belong to this period, as well as the Aryankas, oldest of the Upanishads. Sutra language is the last stratum of Vedic Sanskrit leading up to 500 BC. Around 500 BC, cultural and political and linguistic factors all contributed to the end of the Vedic period. The codification of the Vedic ritual reached its peak and counter movements such as Vedanta and early Buddhism spread, using the vernacular Pali rather than Sanskrit for their texts. Darius of Persia invaded the Indus Valley, and the political center of the Indo-Aryan kingdoms shifted eastwards to the Gangetic plain. Around this time, 4th century BC, Panini fixed the grammar of classical Sanskrit. Sound change between Proto-Indo-Iranian and Vedic Sanskrit included the loss of voiced sibilant j. There are altogether 50 sounds of the Vedic language, 13 of which are vocalic and 39 consonantal. These are 9 simple vowels, 20 mutes divided into 5 classes, each of which has its nasal, making a group of 27. 5 gutturals, 5 palatals, 7 cerebrals, 5 dentals, 5 labials, 4 semivowels, 3 sibilants, 1 aspiration, 1 pure nasal, and 3 voiceless aspirants. The simple vowels are ordinarily represented an original short vowel a, e, u, but it also often replaces an original sonant nasal representing the reduced form of the unaccented syllables. The diphthongs represent the high grade corresponding to the weak grade vowels e and u. The result of the covalence of a with an e and u in external and internal sandhi. Simple vowels are found to interchange in derivation as well as in verbal and nominal inflection with fuller syllables, or if short, also with long vowels. This exchange is dependent on shift of accent. The fuller or long syllables remains unchanged while it bears the accent, but it reduced to a simple or short vowel when left by the accent. Pitch accent was not restricted to Vedic. Early Sanskrit grammarian Panini gives the accent rules for the spoken language of his post-Vedic times and the differences of Vedic accent. Vedic Sanskrit had a pitch accent. Later Vedic was marginally a tonal language. In the metrically restored versions of the Rig Veda, almost all of the syllables carrying an independent svarita must revert to a sequence of 2 syllables, the first of which carries an udatta and the second the so-called dependent svarita. Early Vedic was thus definitely not a tonal language but a pitch accent language. The Pluti vowels were on the verge of becoming phonological during the Middle Vedic, but disappeared again. Vedic Sanskrit differs from classical Sanskrit to an extent comparable to the difference between Homeric Greek and classical Greek. Vedic Sanskrit had a voiceless bilabial fricative and a voiceless velar fricative, which used to occur when the breath visarga appeared before voiceless labial and velar consonants respectively. Both of them were lost in classical Sanskrit to give way to simple visarga. Vedic Sanskrit had a retroflex lateral approximant la as well as its aspirated counterpart vaha, which were lost in classical Sanskrit to be replaced with the corresponding plosives da and dha. The pronunciation of the syllabic ri and li and their long counterparts no longer retained their pure pronunciation but had started to be pronounced as short and long ri and li. The vowels a and o are actually realized in Vedic Sanskrit as diphthongs I and au, but they became pure monophthongs in classical Sanskrit. The vowels I and au are actually realized in Vedic Sanskrit as hiatus I and au, but they became diphthongs I and u in classical Sanskrit. The dental consonants were articulated from the root of the teeth, but they became pure dentals later. This includes the r, which later became retroflex. Vedic Sanskrit had a pitch accent which could even change the meaning of the words. At some later time, this was replaced by a stress accent limited to the second to fourth syllables from the end. Today, the pitch accent can be heard only in traditional Vedic chantings. Vedic Sanskrit often allowed two like vowels to come together without merger during Sandhi. The grammatical tradition of Sanskrit began in late Vedic India and culminated in the Ashtadhyayi of Panini, a work which consists of 3,990 sutras or aphorisms. Paninian grammar is based on 14 Shiva Sutra. The grammar of the Sanskrit language has a complex verbal system, rich nominal declension, and extensive use of compound nouns. It was studied and codified by Sanskrit grammarians from the later Vedic period, roughly 8th century BC, culminating in the Paninian grammar of the 4th century BC. Vedic had a subjunctive absent in Panini's grammar and generally believed to have disappeared by then, at least in common sense constructions. All tenses could be conjugated in the subjunctive and optative moods, in contrast to classical Sanskrit with no subjunctive and only a present optative. The three synthetic past tenses, imperfect, perfect, and aorist, were still clearly distinguished semantically in at least the earliest Vedic. The imperfect was a narrative tense similar to the Greek aorist. The perfect was often indistinguishable from the present tense, although possibly with a stative meaning, and the aorist had a meaning similar to the Greek perfect. A fifth mood, the injunctive, also existed. The subjunctive mood of the Vedic grammar was also lost in classical Sanskrit. Also, there were no fixed rules about the use of various tenses, lun, lan, and lit. There were more than 12 ways of forming infinitives in Vedic Sanskrit, of which classical Sanskrit retained only one form. Nominal declensions and verbal conjugations also changed pronunciation, although the spellings were mostly retained in classical Sanskrit to regularize and standardize its grammar, which led to the purge of old Proto-Indo-European forms. Both Proto-Indo-European and Vedic Sanskrit were end-inflected languages and had independent prefix morphemes. Such prefixes, especially for verbs, could come anywhere in the sentence, but in classical Sanskrit it became mandatory to attach them immediately before the verb. They then ceased being independent morphemes and became prefix morphemes bound to the beginning of verbs. There were similar developments from Homeric Greek to classical Greek. Long I stems differentiated the Devi inflection and the Vakris inflection, a difference lost in classical Sanskrit. Vedic Sanskrit is a highly inflected language with three grammatical genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter, and the three numbers singular, plural, and dual. It has 8 cases: nominative, vocative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, genitive, and locative. The 5 common declensions which a noun belongs to is determined largely by form. The basic declension suffix scheme for nouns and adjectives is, according to gender and the ending consonant/vowel of the uninflected word stem. There are predetermined rules of compulsory sandhi which would then give the final inflected word. The parenthesis gives the case terminations for the neuter gender The rest are for masculine and feminine genders. When two or more forms are given, the first is masculine and neuter, but the second and third feminine. A stems a and her comprise the largest class of nouns. As a rule, noun belonging to this class with the uninflected stem ending in short a are either masculine or neuter. Nouns ending in long aha are almost always feminine. E and u stems are only feminine. R and Ra stems are predominantly agental derivatives. One other notable feature of the nominal system is the very common use of nominal compounds, which may be huge 10+ words, as in some modern languages such as German. Nominal compounds occur with various structures. However, morphologically speaking, they are essentially the same. Each noun or adjective is in its weak form, with only the final element receiving case inflection. Some examples of nominal compounds include dvandva, coordinative; bahuvrihi, possessive; tatpurusa, determinative; karmadharaya, descriptive; amaritita, iterative; and dvigu. The first and second person pronouns are declined for most part alike, having by analogy assimilated themselves with one another. Where two forms are given, the second is enclitic and an alternative form. We have the cardinal numbers from 1 to 10, eka, dvau, 3, and so on. And all these numbers are declinable. The numbers from 5 to 19 do not have any differences in gender. The ordinal numbers are from 1 to 10 and are prathamas, dvityas, trityas, and so on. Sanskrit has 10 classes of verbs divided into two broad groups, athematic and thematic. The thematic verbs are so called because an a called the theme vowel is inserted between the stem and the ending. This serves to make the thematic verbs generally more regular. Exponents used in verb conjugation include prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and reduplication. Each root has 0, guna, and vriddhi grades. The verb tenses, a very inexact application of the word, since more distinctions than simply tenses are expressed, are organized into 4 systems as well as gerunds and infinitives, and such creatures as intensives, desideratives, causatives, and benedictives derived from more basic forms. There are 4 tense systems: present, perfect, aorist, future. The present system includes the present tense and the imperfect, that is past imperfect, the optative and imperative moods, as well as some of the remnant forms of old subjunctive. The tense system of the present system is formed in various ways. The perfect is only used in the indicative. The stem is formed with reduplication as with the present system. The perfect system also produces separate strong and weak forms of the verb. The strong form is used with the singular active and the weak form with the rest. The perfect in the Sanskrit can be in the form of simple perfect and the periphrasetic perfect. The only perfect is in the indicative. The simple perfect is the most common form and can be made from most of the roots. The simple perfect stem is made by reduplication and, if necessary, by stem lengthening. The conjugated form takes special perfect endings. The aorist system stem actually has 3 different formations: the simple aorist, the reduplicating aorist, and the sibilant aorist. The simple aorist is taken directly from the root. The reduplicating aorist involves reduplication as well as vowel reduction of the stem. The sibilant aorist is formed with the suffixion of "sir" to the stem. The sibilant aorist by itself has four formations: athematic, "sir" aorist, athematic, "is" aorist, athematic, "cis" aorist, and thematic, "sir" aorist. The future system is formed with the suffixion of "sya" or "isya" and "guna. Verbs then conjugate as though they were thematic verbs in the present system. The imperfect of the future is used as a conditional. Each verb has a grammatical voice, whether active, passive or middle. There is also an impersonal voice which can be described as the passive voice of the intransitive verbs. Sanskrit verbs have an indicative, an optative, and an imperative mood. Older forms of the language had a subjunctive, though this had fallen out of use by the time of classical Sanskrit. Conjugational endings in Vedic Sanskrit convey person, number, and voice. Different forms of the endings are used depending on what tense system and mood they are attached to. Verb stems or the endings themselves may be changed or obscured by sandhi. Primary endings are used with present indicative and future forms. Secondary endings are used with the imperfect, conditional, aorist and optative. Perfect, imperative and subjunctive endings are used with the perfect, imperative and subjunctive respectively. In present and imperfect indicative, singular active forms have the accent on the stem and take strong forms, while the other forms have the accent on the ending and take weak forms. In imperative, accent is variable and affects noun vowel quality. The passive voice forms for all tenses and moods are made by adding ya to the zero grade stem and then adding the middle voice ending of appropriate tense and mood. The causative is made by adding the suffix aya to the vriddhi form. The desiderative is made by reduplication of root and suffix sa. The intensive describes a repeated or particularly intensive activity. With verbs of the movement, it means back and forth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me a patient hearing.